Welcome to the first Not Another Baptist podcast, a laid-back chat between Kyle Bierman, pastor of First Baptist in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and myself, Matt Hensley, pastor of Mayhill Baptist in, Mayhill, New Mexico. Kyle, first things first, what on earth are we doing?
Really good question, and I don't have a really good answer for that. Some folks are going to say that we're crazy. But you know what? We're going to do something totally different that's just like a dozen other podcasts out there. So let's, one thing for sure, it's not going to be boring, and we might get some good laughs out of it, to be sure.
That's what we hope. Well, Kyle, tell us what's happening in Alamogordo, the desert. What's happening down there?
Man. So we are, it's cooling off quite a bit here tonight. We had softball games. We played and had long sleeves on and sweatpants. So it's starting to feel a little bit more like Mayhill maybe than the desert. But no, man, things are going well. Church is going good. We're baptizing a young girl tomorrow morning. So we're excited about that.
And praise the Lord.
Yeah. How about you? What's going on up on the mountain?
Well, up on the mountain, I believe it was 28 degrees, watching some TV out on the porch, and I was pretty cold, but grateful for my heater out there. Things at the church are going fantastic. We're growing and continuing our series in Philemon and Esther, and having a great time with both of those, and enjoying to kind of see what all God is going to do and continue to do in and through, or perhaps in spite of some of those things. And but God is good, and we're looking forward perhaps to the snow that's to come. You mentioned the softball. Kyle, what on earth were you doing this afternoon?
This afternoon, let's see. So our softball team hasn't played in a few weeks. So we did practice at 3:30, and then we had game at 5 o'clock and a game at 6 o'clock. And I get done with my softball game at 7 o'clock, and I check my phone, and it has blown up because you have gone on and set up this Not Another Baptist podcast Facebook page and website and all this stuff. And so all of a sudden I'm getting all these notifications when I get done with my softball team that man, you jumped full on into this thing, man. You were ready to go.
I have the tendency to do those things. So in other words, what you're saying is you were farting around while right, I was doing the Lord's work and getting this off the ground. Yes. This afternoon, while you were in your sweats and playing softball, we traveled to Cruces and had lunch at Rebecca, my wife, and our favorite restaurant is Genghis Grill. That used to be kind of our date night place back when we were in Texas. And so we made a long little drive to Cruces and took the girls and our $60 poorer for that, and then walked around the mall to kind of walk off the carbs and the goodies we ate there, and made it back. And we had the idea about the podcast, and I just jumped in and started making Twitter pages and Facebook pages. And I was like, hey, I'm done. That's the end of what I know how to do with podcasts. I can make a website. I can make a Twitter page. I can make a Facebook page. And then it's like, well, now what? And so here we are right now. We're trying to figure out if this is going to be Audacity, if this is going to be YouTube, whatever we need to do to get this fantastic content into the ears of the people that will listen to this train wreck. And but I'm looking forward to seeing what all we'll cover. And so, Kyle, I know you there at First Alamo. I can't remember when it was founded. What year was it founded?
So First Baptist Alamogordo was founded in 1898. So we are getting ready to celebrate our 120th anniversary next year.
Wow, praise God. And we're awesome. 1903 here. And so we have that in common. We're in churches that have been around longer than we have, and longer than our parents have, and perhaps longer than our grandparents, probably going all the way back to even before New Mexico was a state. Yet one of the things that we have in common is church revitalization and working through some of the NAM content and whatnot. And so, Kyle, one of the things we'll be talking about through the podcast will be church revitalization. Tell us about some of the revitalization work you're doing there in Alamo.
Yeah, so for the record, New Mexico became a state in 1912. So yes, both of our churches are quite a bit older than the state of New Mexico. So First Baptist Alamogordo for a long time was a traditional downtown First Baptist church. Our facility is still in downtown Alamogordo. And really, so back 25, 30 years ago, we would have been running 800-900 people on a Sunday morning. We have a sanctuary seat somewhere in the ballpark of 500. And so I've heard that at one time we were running 2 services and we're filling the sanctuary for both services. But that was 25, 30 years ago. There were a series of splits and blow-ups that finally resulted in the church trickling down to about 60 back in 2011. They went without a pastor for about 5 years until I got the call and said yes. And so we arrived here on the field in March of 16 and have been working to revitalize the church. We're running now somewhere in the high 70s or 80s most Sundays, up from mid 50s, 60s when we got here about 18 months ago. So we still got a long way to go. I'm not sure that First Baptist Alamogordo is ever going to get back to 800-900 people, but we can become a healthy revitalization. And it's just a long process, man, of coming in and loving on folks and finding out the way, as you well know, in revitalization setting, finding out how things are being done, and then looking at, okay, is this the best way to do it? Is this the biblical way to do it? And trying to get things back on track. So it's not boring, that's for sure. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride at times, but we're seeing God do some amazing things. We've been able to baptize some folks this year, more folks than we have in probably the last 5 or 6 years, and so it's been real exciting. And now you're involved in kind of a revitalization there at Mayhill too. So for our listeners maybe who aren't familiar with New Mexico, I mean, we're only 40 miles apart, maybe not even that far, but we live in different worlds. So talk, Alamogordo is down in the desert. White Sands National Monument's 10 miles away. We're an Air Force community. We have a huge Air Force base here, a town of about 45,000 people. You're in a very different world up where you are. So talk a little bit about Mayhill and about the church there that you're involved in.
We're very rural. I have a nice beard that fits in nicely with some of our mountain folks, and we're grateful that we've had some faithful interim pastors over the years, and certainly some difficulties in the past. But where we're at now is a healthy, I guess you could say, a foundation. And I think one of the things we both have in common is perhaps a love for, like the passage in Ezekiel is, can these dry bones live? Yeah, and how are we going to go about that? We're going to preach, and we're going to, as you said, love on folks. And it's not a new program. It's not a new cliche or a new creative approach. We're going to be faithful to preach the word and reach the world, which kind of spins right into what another topic we'll be waxing eloquently on for a while. But I hope even more than that, our churches will be faithful in leading out and kind of setting the pace, especially for our state, and that's church planting. And I know you have a heart for it, and here at our church, we've begun that process of how we can partner with some of the young churches and the brand new churches, and perhaps even setting the stage for planting our own. And so Kyle, talk to us about that. What do y'all do with church planting, or how have y'all begun some of those processes?
Yeah, so we haven't done a whole lot. We have kind of a weird relationship with church planting in that First Baptist has a history of church planting, and there are a couple other churches in Alamogordo that are actually planted out of First Baptist Church. And then through some church splits through the years, we replanted them a couple of times as well. So there's that. We're struggling financially, like a lot of churches are. So right now we don't have a whole lot of money to pour into church planting. However, when I've talked with some folks at our state about how we can be involved in church planting, we have some office space that we can make available to a church planter here in town. And I know there are some areas here that are on the church planting radar from our state convention, from church planting catalysts. So that's one way that we want to be involved as much as possible. constantly putting names out before our people to pray for planters. And I know you can talk more about that because you've been much more diligent about that than I have been about praying for planters and making that known to your people. But I think one of the keys that we have to convince our people of is that we're not at competition with new church plants. Mm-hmm. You and I just heard this last week that the numbers coming out of the North American Mission Board, they want a Southern Baptist church in urban areas for every 1,000 people, in rural areas for every 500 people. We're in a town of 46,000 people, and we have about 6 Southern Baptist churches in town. So we're way behind that curve. We've got plenty of ground to make up there. And so just letting folks know, look, we're not at competition with church plants. If a church plant comes in, we don't need to feel threatened by that, but it's a way to reach some folks that are probably not being reached by a traditional established church or a church in revitalization around here. So tell us what Mayhill's doing, because I know you guys have some pretty exciting stuff going on with church planning that you're getting involved in as well.
Yeah, and some of it perhaps I would like to wait until we finalize our budget, because as we all know, that comes with some uncertainty. But Lord willing, and our congregation willing, as we move forward into 2018, we'll be setting aside 4% of our income every month for church plants. And in the beginning, of course, if we don't have anybody lined out directly, we'll set that aside and kind of a pool of money and have that there, and some funds for some of the specific needs that they might have, whether it's sound systems, or we found out one need that a church planter really just needed help driving to and from folks' house and getting around in the town. And so having a way to maybe give gas cards or that sort of thing. But one of the keys that we've set aside for our church is that it's not going to be a matter of just sending a check every month, which is important, but also sending our prayers, which is important, but also us going ourselves. And so, when a church plant in our neck of the woods, or one that we're supporting, is having a block party or something of that nature, where we can send a group of folks that would love on them and help them out, just do whatever is needed. Sometimes that's the best thing that you can give them. It's not just your prayers or your money, but being there and supporting them alongside of what they're doing. And so that's one of the things that I found, and I know you found, is when you've got missionaries in front of your church, your people are more apt to give. And when you've got church planters in front of your church, and where they know their names, know their family, know their church, and what's going on there, that they're more apt to open up the pocketbooks and help them any way possible. But more than that, even be willing to get in the car and maybe drive an hour, 2 hours, and help them out with an event. And so that's some of the DNA that we're trying to set in our church, and lay the kind of groundwork for that, and really set the pace for our folks to be part of the church planning in our state, because it's a need. As you've heard Absolutely. The same statistics that we have, because we're close enough together. We've got about 90 to 95% lostness, and that's a sad word, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity. And so I'm stoked to see how God will move in our churches and in our convention and in our state as we reach the lost, because it kind of goes back to that same thing. We preach the word, and we'll reach the world. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I love our generous church, and excited to see them move from just being spectators to being in that fight with those folks. And so our church, I really believe, has some good days ahead of her, and I believe will be a vital part of the church planning efforts of our state, and I think Alamo will as well. And that kind of sets the stage for a few of the topics that we'll be talking about here on Not Another Baptist Podcast. We'll look at church revitalization. That's going to be a main topic. We'll talk through some of the things we're dealing with, things that we've learned, and hope that we can help other pastors that are in the same boat. We'll talk through planting. We'll bring on some planters that we can hear what God is doing in their churches and in their communities. And then, of course, being Southern Baptist, we've got a lot of ground to cover with some topics that we could discuss and chat about, and just have a good time talking. All of these will be short. They'll be sweet, right to the point, and we're going to aim to keep these 15, 20 minutes where you can hear them, hear what God's doing here. Hope to encourage you with what God is doing where you're at, and hopefully see God do something amazing through this. And so, Kyle, before we wrap it up, what else do you want to add for us?
Man, I'm just excited that there's some folks, maybe it seems like, who are interested in listening to us two knuckleheads talk about random topics and whatnot. So when I was in youth ministry, I used to tell my students, if I couldn't say it in under 20 minutes, it didn't need to be said. And that's now, as a pastor, extended out to about 35 minutes. But like you said, our goal here is to keep it short and sweet. And again, we're not another Baptist podcast, so we're not going to do it the way other guys are doing it. We're gonna do our own thing here. And I'm just excited to see where it goes, to see what the Lord does as we have a chance to talk revitalization in New Mexico, to talk about some different topics that are current to the Southern Baptist Convention, and just do life and cover some topics in ministry. I think we're gonna have a good time, and we might even learn a thing or two along the way as well.
Awesome. I hope we learn just as much as our listeners will. Well, we would love to connect with you on Facebook at Not Another Baptist Podcast, and on Twitter at NAB_podcast. We'd certainly ask for you to support us on Patreon at Not Another Baptist Podcast to help offset the cost, and ask you to stay up to date with what's happening with this train wreck. I mean, this Not Another Baptist Podcast. That's what we should have called it.
That's right. Yeah, the train wreck.
Absolutely. But until next time, may your coffee be as black as night and as bold as the gospel you proclaim. Have a great day, and God bless.